We're going to move on, though, into our next game, the Michigan State Spartans against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Guys, Notre Dame, they started off with a loss, but arguably you could say, yes, Texas won that game, but if DeShone Kizer played from the word go, could have been a very different game for the Irish. Kizer looked good in week 2. We get to see him again week 3. He is the quarterback. Is he going to bring Notre Dame back to the limelight, although they lost week 1?
Kizer hasn't looked bad, ever. I mean, Kaiser's been a great starting quarterback for ND. There was the reason he was one of the reasons why they were so great last year. And I mean, in that Texas game, it wasn't like he played poorly. It was just piss poor coaching.
Yeah, it was.
Brian
That's
Kelly.
what I'm saying. The 2-quarterback system put him behind.
DeShone Kizer should have been the quarterback no matter what. I don't care what Zaire brings to the table. I mean Kizer was the clear-cut quarterback here. I think this is Kizer's game to lose, to be honest with you. I think Kizer is going to be motivated to stay the clear-cut quarterback here. And Brian Kelly, he did lose his first game. It was that crazy, the first game he did lose to Michigan State. That was that crazy fake field goal play there. But ever since then, he's been 3-0 against the Sparty here. And I think that Kizer will be motivated. I think that Brian Kelly doesn't have the blueprint, because I don't think anyone has a blueprint to beat Michigan State. But I think that he can definitely be the motivating factor here to get his team over. And I think this is kind of Notre Dame's game to lose here, because if they lose this game, they're basically out of college football playoff contention.
Are they, though?
Yes.
Because there has been talk, like, even after week 1 and teams lost, people were saying, hey, you know what? We could have a 2-loss college team in the playoff this year.
It would have to be completely insane for them to be able to make it, for any team really to be able to make it with 2 losses. Could it happen? Sure. Anything can happen in college football, and it does eventually. But it would be so hard.
And the one thing too is, if they lose 2 games to ranked opponents and they end up beating Stanford, like let's say they run the table, if they lose to Michigan State, they run the table, they beat Stanford, they only have probably 2 wins over ranked opponents and 2 losses to ranked opponents, and they'll beat Stanford and Miami if they do run the table. But outside of that, they won't have a key victory here. They won't have like a victory that kind of jumps out here unless Stanford stays undefeated. I think that they need to win this to get a marquee win and be like, well, see, we beat a Big Ten opponent, and that Texas game was really close. It's not like we lost to Texas in a close game, and then we lost to Michigan State only 2 weeks later.
I think that Notre Dame in this one, it's going to be critical for them to get the win. I really like what I've seen from Kizer, though. I think that he's been very effective, and I actually loved what I saw in Game 1 against Texas. They weren't able to get the win because Texas really came with a good offense, and Buechele, again, we talked about him already, but very impressive.
And
very
don't forget
impressive.
swoops on the goal line, the 18-wheeler
Of course,
formation.
the 18-wheeler. But here's one thing for Michigan State, though. The Spartans, again, they only win 28-13 over Furman. And this is kind of going back to the segment when we were talking about Alabama and Ole Miss. Alabama only won by 28 points over whoever cares about the team they played. I don't know. But that was the time for Michigan State to play poorly, because now it's that time of now we really, it's sometimes very hard for teams, and Ricky, you and I have seen this, Sean as well. Whenever you're kind of watching a game or calling a game or anything like that, a good team, when they're playing a real bad team, sometimes they play way down to that level. And that's what we see, I think, a lot of times in college football. When they play such a poor team, it's just hard to get in that rhythm. It's hard to get amped up. It's hard to get going. And I think that's one of them. But when you play, in Alabama's instance, you're playing Ole Miss this weekend. That's huge. You're getting amped. Or Notre Dame playing Michigan State. You are getting pumped. You are getting pumped. You're thinking about it all week. You're getting excited about it all week. That's what you're planning for all week. Time to go.
Is it good or bad then that Michigan State's had technically 2 weeks to get amped for this game? It's not just hey, like this week is, it's game week, but all last week you're thinking, we got ND coming up next. We got ND coming up next.
I think that's good. I think that's good because you have those 2 weeks then to really get focused, really get prepared for them.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if that hurts Notre Dame. I think it definitely helps Michigan State. I don't know if it hurts Notre Dame though, because
Notre Dame still's got to come in with the game plan.
Well, and yeah, but they were still pumped up to go against Texas.
It's a rivalry game. If you're not getting up for a rivalry game, get out and sit on the bench.
I think that maybe Michigan State has the advantage because they didn't play a team like Texas. They did go up against smaller opponents there, and they might not be as bruised and battered here. But I think that Notre Dame, I think it would be more of Michigan State might be pumped up because they had 2 weeks to get pumped up for Notre Dame. But I don't think that really hurts Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's still going to be ready to go, and I think they need to be ready to go. It's kind of like the Louisville thing. If they get out to an early lead and keep that early lead going, and are able to keep away the big plays that hurt them in the Texas game, because they were able to stop the run for a little bit there against Texas. I think that if they're able to stop Michigan State's running game and get out to an early lead and kind of put Michigan State down a little bit, I think that's going to be playing to Notre Dame's advantage.
Here's what Notre Dame needs to do. Against Texas, 7 red zone trips for the Longhorns. They scored on 6 of them. Nevada only managed 10 points on 3 drives in the red zone. Notre Dame has to be good in the red zone. They have to be able to defensively hold off, stave off these offenses. And even if you're allowing 3 points, much better than 7. And I think that's definitely what Notre Dame has to do. Defensively, they have to be there. They played down a team that not as good as Texas and that Nevada team, but I think that allowing 50 points in that first game, it was a very high scoring affair. Anyone could look at that and say, oh, Texas has a bad defense, Notre Dame has a bad defense. No, the offenses came to play that day. But Notre Dame's defense definitely has to be better than that week 1 game. They have to do better in the secondary. That is huge. They cannot be burnt as much as they were. So defense is a big one, but defense in the red zone is also a big one because of the amount of plays they allowed and the amount of big plays in the red zone that happened there. And I think one of them is the running game. They knew it was coming every time with swoops. They knew it was coming. They knew he wasn't passing. Still couldn't stop it. You need to be able to stop that because what's Michigan State going to try and do? Pound the ball.
What do you take away from? I know you just mentioned the run game, Brandon, but I look at the quarterback. That's the position that I look at the most because it's the one that I kind of, growing up, that's the one I always wanted to be. So I always look at quarterbacks. You got Tyler O'Connor for Michigan State.
Taylor O'Connor.
Yeah, he's
a real
been,
Irish name.
He's been with the team all this time, but this is the first time he's starting, and I gave you a little bit of my terrible Irish accent there. But
where?
A little bit just ago. I tried to put it in there.
I didn't even hear that.
No, I tried.
Taylor
It was
O'Connor.
bad. It was bad. But
sounds like you should be starting for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
That's what you get when you get a Pollock trying to speak
Who are you?
Irish here.
Like,
Shaughnessy?
Sean Anderson. Oh, Shag Hennessy.
Shaq Hennessy.
But the point I'm trying to get to, this is the first time he's starting. Well, this as the starting quarterback with no one above him. This is the biggest game he's going to start.
It is, and he's going up against Notre Dame, who last year was a top team on the road in South Bend with touchdown Jesus looking behind him. He's going up against DeShone Kizer, who's kind of pushing his way up the draft board here. He's gonna have to be fantastic, and maybe they do rely on the running game a little bit more, just because they will have a guy who's starting here. But we also talk about that with Notre Dame. That might kind of push him away because we saw what happened with Texas. I mean, that was Buechel's first game starting, and he did fantastic. It might be more of, hopefully Notre Dame realizes that it is his first game starting, but still he needs to step up and play like he is a quarterback that's been there for 2 years. And
I want to ask you guys this. This is getting a little bit ahead, but it's because you brought it up and you said rising up draft boards. DeShone Kizer, I know we've only seen 2 games. This is going to be a good one. Do you think by the end of the year, are we talking maybe DeShone Kizer number 1 overall in the draft? Or can he rise that high?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt to me. If he's playing the way he does and doesn't take a step back, he's 71% completion percentage, 7-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He's not a great runner, but he can still run.
I love that completion percentage, by the way.
Oh, I mean, it's fantastic.
Give me anything above 63, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's fantastic what he is doing, and he's not a great runner. He's not a guy who's going to be like a Cam Newton or a guy like a Swoops or a Lamar Jackson.
But he's going to use his legs to help his passing.
Yeah. And if he's the big knock on him last year was his decision making, and it seems like he's tweaked a lot of those poor decisions, and it seems like he's finally getting into the groove of everything. And the way he played in that Texas game really just cemented him as a guy who can really be a star quarterback in college and probably the NFL.
What I think is I don't think that DeShone Kizer is actually getting enough love because too many people
I'll give it
are.
to him. I'll give him enough love.
Well, I'm saying I'm saying
Kiss
by
the
the
damn guy.
I'm okay
We could try to
on
set
the lips.
that up.
On the lips.
We can try to set that up if you want, Sean.
On the lips.
Oh, on the lips for sure.
Yeah.
I kissed Tom Brady
Tongue.
if you wanted to.
All right. Well, that's awesome. But
I'm a giver. I'm a giver.
That's awesome, man. Everyone loves a giver. But I think that what you have to take a look at is
I wish this was a video podcast just so they could see Sean getting all giddy covering his face. But go on, Brandon.
is the fact that so many people are still looking at Deshaun Watson. So many people are looking at Chad Kelly.
That's
because
gonna
of
change.
But it's because of the fact that they kind of said, "Look at me, look at me." They're bringing this attention to themselves. Kizer just goes out there, plays football,
and that's the kind of guy you want.
And I love that, and that's why, yes, Ricky, I think that he definitely could rise in the draft. I think that people would definitely want him because this is a guy that just goes out there, does his job.
Number
Guess what?
one?
He doesn't
Number
need
one,
to
though?
talk.
Number one, though?
Number one, I don't know about that.
It also depends on what team's picking number one.
Because if it's let's say it's
Well,
the
it's probably
Cleveland,
the Browns.
let's say it's the Cleveland Browns. They have no success, so they would go with a guy who probably be a little shaky. So they wouldn't go with the solid bet. We all know that.
However, I'm going to throw this out there. This is a huge hypothetical, but that might be a controversial call because the last Fighting Irish quarterback that they selected in Cleveland. Brady Quinn.
But Brady Quinn wasn't a good quarterback.
But still, we're going to talk
Two
about
different
it.
quarterbacks here.
We would still talk about it.
We'll see where
Am I
see where
wrong?
he goes. We'll
Am
see
I
where
wrong?
He goes here.
But before we move on to the final one, what are you guys thinking for this one? I'm going with Michigan State only because I think that they're going to get it done in the end, maybe by a field goal.
You're an idiot, though. Notre Dame's winning this one. DeShone Kizer is a fantastic quarterback. Might be, I'm probably showing Notre Dame bias here, but he's probably the best quarterback in college football right
Golden
now.
Tate ain't going to catch that ball running in the end zone and dive into the band.
No, because he hasn't played for Notre Dame in about 5 years. What, are you calling on Jeff Samardzija too?
Well, yeah, he got it. Wide receiver.
Yeah, he's pitching in the
doing
MLB
anything
right
in
now.
the MLB right now.
Giants are in playoff contention anyways. Notre Dame's winning by 7.
I think that Notre Dame's defense is actually going to come up in this one, and they're going to force O'Connor to kind of be the guy. I don't think he's going to be able to in this one, and Notre Dame is going to get the win.
Well, you guys down below, let us know who you guys got winning. What are you thinking about for this game? Also, I want you guys to let us know, do you think DeShone Kizer can rise to number 1 draft pick worthy in the draft by the end of the season?